I'll go over a little bit of context on where our organization, I come from, and we'll go into some of the insights that we have actually gotten over a period of time, right? It's about a year and a half journey, a sort of mixed results. And before I go neck deep into this one, just a overall setting, right? A lot of, actually, Venkata, when we, back then, about a couple of months back when we were talking about this, almost made me, or made us, swear in blood that there won't be any marketing pitch out here, right? It's totally not. And a lot of stuff that we do is essentially dog fooding. Dog fooding is very high up in our radar in terms of our tools, our processes that we actually go put in play, right? So we find a little bit of that in the background. But there's been an overall, so just to go back into the context of where we come from, so we manage what we call as an application DevOps team. It's about 100 plus. We are, just to give you a context about the team, we are about 100 plus team spread across multiple geolocations, mainly focused on actually delivering our customer-facing B2B, e-commerce, all of the integration applications. So essentially, we take the, once the core R&D engineering product is done, we actually come out to look at we come out to look at rolling out the product out to our customers and the entire customer life cycle, right? Essentially from beginning, inception to almost to the sunsetting of a product, the whole life cycle management. And so a lot of these operations involve several aspects, right from your beta releasing the product to all the way to your life cycle as you go along, roll out the product, customer support aspects. There are a bunch of customer-facing applications that are actually taking care of that. We also take care of the all order management aspects, the core order management aspects. So given that particular context, going into the context, post that we'll go into a couple of things that we have done on the IT operational side mostly to gain our stability and agility aspects. That's our section 2. And then section 3 will cover some of the application aspects, core application aspects that has been super helpful for us. Overall, has been a fantastic results to see this journey in about a year and a half, and glad to share here today, right? So going into the context, so ours is a fairly broad ecosystem, and for these applications, we have, as you can see on the slide, a lot of systems that we are actually having both on our on-prem private cloud instances. That's a snapshot of our tech stack. World has changed, a lot of cloud interactions. We have about 20 plus systems that we actually interface with today. We've been dismantling a lot of our on-prem systems, almost to, stunning degree, right? There's been one pretty much every month that has been actually dismantled if you look at the last 18 months. And that's the industry trend, right? Gone are your client-server architectures. You're now in this completely network architecture zone. The whole ecosystem is like an octopus that you're actually going to work with. So we are no different. On the far right over there, you see the VMware Hybrid Cloud and the vCloud Air Network, which is our cloud solution. And we have certain mission-critical enterprise systems that are running out of that. And based on our use cases, we actually go flip into that versus here. So this is going into just a snapshot of our release to production. All those green dots that you see here is a production release of something across the BUs. What you see on the left simulation, we took the names out, but just an eye chart of stuff that goes out to production. And it's a constant streams that are actually hitting production. The right triangles are the ones that are actually sort of in the inception stage, but not committed to that date, but there's active work happening. The ones that are tying all of those are a particular release that goes across our stack. a point is a fairly busy schedule across this, right? And then in order for us to support, we actually do about 40 tier 1 programs a year. On an average, about 40 major programs across the board releases. You cannot actually wait for one to get over for another. There you see our instance paths. There is about 5 of these parallel tracks that are running at any particular time. You have instances to do emergency production support paths. All of this needs to have a lot of coordination work that happens across cross-functional teams, making sure that all of these are tying together, right? So a couple of years, 2 to 3 years back, we thought we had all this figured out, right? So everything, we used to do at least half as much. Business has grown, and we used to do half as much, and we thought everything was hunky-dory. We have figured this out, patted ourselves on the back. Well, bonus was getting on the bank at the right times, and our people were happy, right? And then come a couple of years back, business was going faster, right? The need and ask was actually, demands were coming in. Hey, can you make this quicker? The SMAC era was starting to hit us. The mobility, the cloud, all of those starting to actually put pressure on our IT organization to deliver faster, right? Agility was the mantra, right? You actually had to deliver. If you aren't going to do what we use, yeah, I'm going to go outside, right? Do something else. And this was actually a serious challenge that was actually being looked at. And everything, end to end, had to be relooked at, right? The status quo was being challenged. We had to go look at every single piece in the cycle to see where you can actually go optimize. And my boss actually challenged, saying that, dude, can you get to a 50% efficiency, right? By the way, you have the icing on the cake was you have some more coming your way, right? And so that's when we started looking at the entire stack and look at, hey, what can we do across the board, right? And a part of our journey, you'll see going into section 2, we started looking at it, all of our stack, and portion of my discussion today is going to be on the operational, complete operational side, and the other portion is going to be on the pure application development side. There are a few takeaways from each of this, and both of them have been stunning results for us. So we'll go into the first one, which is the automated instance provisioning stuff. So as you go, going back to the slide and the instance paths, some of these are, so VMs, we do that for a living. And we had figured that out in 2007, 2006, all the virtualization technology, right? So I was way back. Now these tech stacks that we are using, our production instance is about 120 virtual machines spread out across stacks. And these need to be actually wired properly and need to work with each other. And come back to that 5 instances parallel paths that we are talking about. We had 20 plus instances on demand and pretty much card based on both your infrastructure as well as data that goes along with it. Hey, if your data is falling behind by 3 months, it's no good, right? I need a testing environment which actually is as close to what I needed and what I have in production. This used to take us 4 to 6 weeks. So we get into the continuous infrastructure delivery space, right? A lot of times, this used to take about 2 years back until we figured this out. When we looked at it, a lot of wait times. Actually, you asked this particular guy, hey, I need this 60 VM somehow configured in this way. This is my presentation tier stack, middleware stack, our core ERP on the back end, and all of this need to glue together. And yeah, boy, yes, we could deliver with VM technology. Getting all of this wired together meant across geo, what you see on the eye chart is all of these configurations and the wait times, right? Essentially, these handoffs are slow. You are on a bridge all the time. You're coordinating. There's release notes that's actually meant for error prone, right? People miss out. And we spent an embarrassing amount of time, right? We spent times that were, hey, uh, 12 hours to figure out an order ended up in a wrong instance. Before this one, I booked on something, and somebody cross-wired, and here's a totally unsuspected instance where it's showing up. So some of these problems had to actually go off over a period of time. So what we actually looked at as our options are two things. One, we actually go put people, SMEs, build that SME knowledge, or you actually go solve this via a blueprinting exercise, right? Something that's completely automated, sort of comes out of the box in a reasonable time and on demand. So obviously chose the second option to go after this one. And where the VMware software actually helped us was the vCloud suite, and specifically the vRealize automation. So this is a mechanism where we took our entire stack, break down into what are the different steps, what is the configuration, underlying configuration, leveraged our underlying blueprinting technology to go blueprint exactly how you wanted this infrastructure and the wiring to be set up. So essentially, what used to take about 4 to 6 weeks shrunk to less than a day, right? And this included our data provisioning, all our wired VMs, and the only part out of that was running towards the end on the left-hand side was our instance-specific scripts that you would actually run, and you also run a bunch of validations right after that. And when it was actually handed over, the DevOps team had a working instance that, with confidence, can say is working end-to-end, and in 22 hours. That's a non-pod instance for us is about 60 VMs glued, wired together with the latest data and on demand. There's a significant advantage to this that we reaped. This was about 2 years back. We have actually matured in that process now that it's a given, right? Anything that's 17 to 22 hours is what we would expect that this instance be carved out. So moving on, so yeah, you have the instance, and now all these application developers that are actually trying different things out there across the board. How do you know some rogue developer ran a SQL query that's hogging up something, right? How do you know your underlying VM is running short on your disk space and storage? Some of our operations management becomes fairly critical for us to actually go pinpoint in a very quick manner. So reduce the mean time to identification. A lot of times it is across, it's a hairball to go figure, and you throw people at it, and it goes layer by layer, and typical troubleshooting and triage process, and a lot of finger pointing and in the process, right? So eliminate all of that, and get to a stage where what does the efficient operations imply? Or a quality of service where you can actually go pinpoint something in a relatively quick time. It actually has intelligence about what's happening in your environment. You can actually reap benefits out of that. And then that eventually turns into your operational cost efficiencies. And a centralized place for adhering to compliance, right? You can actually enforce rules. Thou shalt not access this environment, or who is allowed to access. And those type of aspects actually start to come into play here. So vCloud operations, this is available in different forms, and it comes as part of the vCloud suite as well, where in the top layer that you see here is actually looking at all your performance, capacity, config, monitoring, and compliance. And VC Operations Manager, you can actually also add on top of vSphere. So what you see here is sort of our one of our test instances, and the heat map on the right-hand side. So this is cross-cutting this is your car dashboard, right? All developers every single developer has access to this particular environment, read-only access, knows what's happening in the system, in the environment, real time, right? And instantaneous feedback about something either running or something going haywire in the environment. So we have actually carved out, so what you see here is all of the health scores, and that health score actually comes based on numerous metrics, right? We have collect hundreds of metrics that actually the technology pumps into a common database. The UI is actually built on top of it. And you could fairly quickly tell, hey, but somebody ran something, and that's actually hitting my baseline systems and across the layer, right? And what you actually see is also some sort of intelligence. What you see on the right-hand side here is this is a typical triage chart of what happens in the system. Somebody alerted that, admin gets alerted that the Oracle app is slow. You're able to cross-cut and go into exactly which particular layer the problem resides. What you see on the right-hand side is also badges. It actually tells you, hey, over a period, it has intelligence about, I'm using the system, this is my typical load over the last 2 weeks. Hey, there is a sudden bump in the load on the systems. Those anomalies are actually starting to show up on the right-hand side. And as an admin, you can actually fairly quickly go drill into, see which areas there are problems. Once you zero in and getting to the actual issue becomes much, much shorter. And this has been given to our developers, making sure those guys actually log in and look at a regular basis and make sure you're reacting to that, whatever you're running into as you go develop. Significant productivity. Developers are happy, same as admins. Our resolution times are much, much faster around when we start doing this. So in summary, actually here, real-time health status, monitoring health, risk, and efficiency. You could also do sort of static or dynamic thresholds, right? You could actually set the system saying that thou shall not go beyond 80% of something, versus you can say, observe the system behavior, and if there are anomalies, start actually alerting us. It also is a sizing opportunity for you to actually go look at how your workloads are behaving. What's my workload behaving? How's my load test system actually behaving? What do I need to actually plan ahead with respect to data and everything else in production? It's a clear sizing and opportunity as well. And so moving on, shifting gears right now and onto the core application space. This is where, this is the core. What is all this infrastructure for if you can't develop apps? This is all for apps. And we actually support about 50 plus business applications across the board, and they have slightly different cycles. Coming from IT as a fairly living organic mechanism, right? Things actually change on a day-to-day basis. The need for something as asked for in a fairly quick time, and being able to react to that. So we looked at, about 2 years back, we looked at the continuous delivery as an option to go look at end-to-end. And a lot of folks come with a different level of maturity in this space. It's a journey. We have been through to some extent, and it hasn't ended yet. There's still a lot of stuff in this space that we are actually embarking on or just about starting. But fabulous results for every org, I think, based on the maturity and the levels there are across the board. You could actually have, you have a technology sprawl that you need to consolidate. You have actually right infrastructure provisioning. You have the monitoring ability. You have the cultural buy-in from the management, right? You have the right governance process for your architecture. All of that counts. We have been on this journey, actually, at least we've gotten the bottom piece fairly figured out much earlier in the cycle. And when we actually went ahead, starting to look at the DevOps, one of the things that we were used to was fairly thick Word documents, right? There's a requirements documents 2.5 years back. And we started to actually look at, our journey started off with 3 pilot projects. We started to say, hey, let's try this out. There's a real cool thing called DevOps. Everybody's talking about it. The more we read about it, feels like freaking we left out on the journey, right? So let's go take a look at this thing. And we took 3 pilot projects. So break down our requirements out of the Word document, right? It was the first thing that we did was, this whole thing needs to integrate. Something needs to weave everything together all the way end to end. And actually managed to have, for these pilot programs, actually create requirements which we call associated FR number, goes into an underlying, we use JIRA was our system, and we actually captured that as part of that particular tool. And it also had sort of your other metrics that you can associate to that particular tag. You have a particular FR number, you had a particular business value that it actually assigned to that particular task. And as your code moves in the organization, that tag actually ties and kicks our actual testing suite in the process. So you check in something, it's the FR number, it's not going to go in. And this was our first pilot, and fairly successful in terms of what it was doing, at least in the dev test space. And we weren't there yet in terms of actually deploying to production, but that in itself actually had a lot of message out there. In principle, people were actually convinced completely and bought into that journey, right? So moving on, so we wanted to actually have an umbrella tool that actually covered. One of the things that we actually had was we have an ERP in the mix. Our deployment mechanisms covered 3 different aspects, right? 3 different tools, because our QA organization was using Jenkins. We had another team that was actually using Bamboo for build mechanisms. We had our core ERP software was moving out with some of our legacy code movement stuff. It was something from HP back then. And we had invested heavily in these scripts to begin with, and getting them all in one common framework was going to take some work for us. So what we actually look at is how can you look at bringing all of this together and have a consistent, repeatable process in which you can actually release software. And exactly know when things go wrong, you're able to pinpoint exactly where it went wrong, which layer owns it, what was a specific issue in a reasonable amount of time, right? And more importantly, as you go build, deploy, your artifacts are exactly as it's supposed to be. Your environment is actually as it's supposed to be, right? So these are all factors that actually went in. One of the things that we looked at is we realized code stream. This is an in-house tool. By the way, I'm not here to sell the tool. If anybody out there is trying to sell you DevOps based on a tool, yeah, be wary. It's a cultural change, right? It's more about your culture process. It so happened that we were actually had an in-house tool that we were actually trying to go leverage and have a Uber umbrella, right? Tool provides abilities, ability to actually leverage your existing investment. It actually allows you, regardless of your build and continuous integration, regardless of your source code control system or your repository systems, provides ways to hook you into that, but it provides some sort of visibility that's running across the board. And that's pretty cool. Once you get to do that, you have all these other systems that can across, even we had in our IT applications deliveries org, three different mechanisms of actually handling this and trying to actually glue that together, right? And then our deployment process to our test UAD production all happening out of our repo. So that was the main reason to actually go leverage this. So this has been evolving product. About 7 to 8 months back, a 1.0 version, and then it has been actually steadily evolving since then. So this is a screenshot of what you actually see out of the vRealize code stream, right? As code actually moves, these are stages that you actually go configure in the tool. As your pipeline is moving from your development to check-ins to build and deploys, you have visibility. And you can actually have not only visibility, you have the ability to actually carve out your stages as appropriate for you, right? And this also interfaces into many of your existing footprint as necessary. So you have existing investment actually brought into the umbrella. Track the life cycle on the builds, and essentially, if there is an error, we're able to actually go pinpoint, build into, it brings up a log file. You're able to exactly know where it failed and why it failed. So we were fairly successful in this particular aspect, at least in the dev and test space. And as we go into further down on the architectural side, we could also look into some of the thinking process on the deployment aspects, right? What we've done and what we've actually leveraged in that space. So one of the other topics that I want, it's a little bit of a digress from the core DevOps, but one of the principles that has been worked out very well for us, and it makes sense to actually bring about here the insights from this. As we were dismantling our on-prem systems onto the cloud, and I said pretty much one in every 1 or 2 months, right? And that's been the pace. As you stand up these instances, now it's no more your on-prem system. This is this network of things that needs to come up, stay, and we will have to connect with that, right? And our QA was getting fairly uncomfortable. Hey, I need all of these things for me to have a stable environment to test. And everything is going to cost money by the web. I mean, multiple systems, we pay SFDC, we work with SFDC, right? It takes a sizable chunk of amount for our non-pod sandbox instance to construct, and so does 30 or 20 other SaaS systems that we work with. We work with Concur, we work with Coupa, Workday. So you have a sizable fat there in terms of what you're actually incurring in terms of just standing up your dev test instances for these things for enabling. And one of the things that we actually went ahead and invested in is what we call as the service virtualization. And depending upon who you ask, an integration guy or someone else out in the space, the meaning slightly varies. But what we refer as the ability to actually simulate these systems. Emulate, can you actually go in, as long as you have a standard contract, hey, is the SOAP REST protocol that I'm interfacing with, these are my standard interface definitions. Can I make that system actually handle all my prioritized test cases in a meaningful way? As long as I'm able to do that emulation and able to actually work with that, I don't need a cloud system per se on a non-pod, especially when I'm not changing it. Like, I'm not changing anything related to my, say, business rules engine. It's a system that I'm going to be using it, but why do I need to actually go stand up a complete instance? This has actually fundamentally changed our ways of actually software development, right? We now actually do everything is contract first. Hey, you're working on something, give me the contract for that one. You're standing up a SaaS system, we'll actually go look at our contracts. Develop the backend system that is actually supplying our test data sufficient enough, but able to handle that. So once you do it, you have a sort of a virtualized environment, and that means you're shifting left to your QA. QA guys are looking at on day one along with dev. What used to be as a practice, you finish the code, dev is all done, throw the wall, and you are actually testing it after it comes to the QA. That's gone. Day one, you're starting writing test cases for all your test scenarios. You're actually pointing where you need systems to your service virtualized entity, right? So this is working instance. At some point, you're going to change that. Of course, you will change that, but that's the emulation concept. And a lot of the challenges that we have actually faced and overcome is around these areas, right? Our dev test environments, our test data preparation. Hey, I have the environment, but I don't have data to actually test all your test cases, and it takes time and energy to go actually configure that. Test automation is limited to well-defined test cases. I will only test what I'm written for, right? This is my P1, P2, P3. I don't care anything that's outside that, right? Over a period, these actual challenged the status quo culture, and now look at, hey, if it is, can I actually look at a SaaS system, every single functionality, can I actually have an emulating behavior that it can respond to, and as much coverage that we could do on that front, at least in the lower instances, that helps me to overcome that. So prior to this, we were using sort of time-sharing approaches. Hey, a particular instance will come in, we'll leverage our e-commerce or subscription SaaS system for a while, and then we'll flip and have another instance point to it, right? There's where there are critical paths. There's definitely that we are actually going after to make a dent into this particular aspect. So this has been fairly successful. We have actually on this journey we've actually done a few on-prem and SaaS systems. low-hanging fruit items in this space. We're going after some of the other ones. There's a prioritized list based on cost factors and other things as we go along. So what you see here is one of the other things that I wanted to sort of reduced infrastructure, shift left functional QA. We spoke about some of those, test data management, and also the parallel development. So the once you have a working instance, you multiple dev streams that are actually moving in parallel. Say, one guy establishes a contract, he may not actually have developed it, but you are already able to create a service virtualization platform that allows you the train that's moving actually are coming behind it to leverage that feature and functionality. So fairly cool benefits out of the approaches here. So we also looked at some of the application architectural considerations, right? Over a period of time, what we have realized is it's almost by model IT, right? You have a core ERP that's relatively slow moving traditionally, right? You talk about in months in terms of the release cycles. And then you have this Mac era, 3-day delivery, 2-day delivery aspects that are actually, that needs to coexist in our environment, given our choices here at the tech stack. There are definitely some of the architectural, application architectural considerations. I haven't gone deep into each of this, but we are actually starting to use in bits and pieces some of these in play today, right? One is you ought to have some sort of governance. I mean, some dude in some tech stack making changes that's tangential to what you're doing on the other side, right? Obviously, you have that overall governance. One of the things that we have established fairly some level of rigor around our architectural governance at the higher level, and mostly our integrations services, any services in the integration space as a service review board that also looks at what's your business direction, what do you need to focus on as an organization, what makes sense to consolidate, drive reuse, have metrics to actually go behind them, and then focus on those metrics. Microservices enablement. This is all too well known in this DevOps application delivery space. We actually, especially in the non-ERP world, it's a given, right? Hey, you want the data, you want it, slice and dice the way you want it, elastic scale as you want it. So all of that is fairly given in the space. Now, when it comes to actually looking at our ability to go into the microservices enablement, we have actually looked at some of our presentation tier apps where you only need a certain amount of data from the core ERP system. You are not interacting on a regular basis, and that happens to be a mostly read-only data. Actually move it into some sort of a data store that you can actually work with, right? And that data store is all yours, and as long as you own that data store, now you can slap services on top that works with it, and then that actually moves on its own, and you have some level of agility that you're actually bringing in with the microservices enablement. The fourth one I got here is the service virtualization enablement. This is what we spoke to earlier. It's also a cultural change for a lot of folks in the organization. We went through this where both our QA, dev, SMEs starting much earlier in the actual defining your test cases as well as actually going and executing them much earlier, right? Our mandate is day one, you are actually plugged into your FR numbers. So remember the pilot programs. You're chunking these requirements. You're actually writing your service virtualization cases for that and ability to actually go do that. It's a cultural shift a little bit, and we had to actually go around, talk to folks to get them onboarded, evangelize, and eventually this is actually picking up in the organization and fairly good results. VMs plus containers, this is something that we are actually looking at, and we have a couple of programs where it has been successful. It's sort of our looking ahead strategy. Develop once, build once, and deploy wherever you want. And this is a fairly good concept that we are actually looking at right now. A couple of programs that have actually leveraged VMs plus Docker and fairly successful in that. Our core underlying management footprint that comes along with that, which provides our core ability to have security and the management platform along with the container approaches. And that actually helps us to better move faster. Uh, One of the other things that we have actually seen is our production supportability, right? We have actually had a lot of emphasis given the network of systems that are coming into play, have the supportability requirements. We have enormous amount of weightage put on level 2 support folks to actually come sit in our governance boards, requirements boards, to actually go define this upfront, right? Significant cultural change to make sure you're not just thinking about your requirements, you're also thinking about your supportability and getting to the issue in a very quick way. That has some architectural implications on how you design the system, and that's all positive changes, right? Then the runtime application insights. We run earlier you saw the VCops sort of dashboard overview, right? A lot of data that's actually coming into you. We have a product called Log Insight that we actually comb through that data. There's insights that you could actually go on that data on your runtime application behavior. And that behavior actually feeds back into your rest of your dev cycles, right? So a combination of these things, especially around the microservices, SV enablement, and the VMs plus containers together, all a combination of those have actually had positive impact. This is an ongoing journey, and we haven't completed this, so that's why not a whole lot here. Definitely, that's something that we're looking at to move forward. So what next? In summary, these are some of our metrics that we have collected over last year, and very positive results. And we've been actually pleasantly surprised where we are right now. And this is all across the organization, well received, right? Developers' productivity, happy to have that anytime. Our provisioning speed. More importantly, our ability to actually go to our businesses and say, yes, we can do it in a time that you're asking for. And that becomes super important from a credibility point of view. Along the way, we have actually made some savings as well due to all of the other factors that are actually coming into play. So overall, in summary, embracing the digital era, right? And we are working in this model where having a core ERP as a traditional slow mover piece, plus the business needs that are actually driving together. And some of these aspects have definitely helped us actually to move forward here. So that's in summary that we wanted to cover here. We have, let's see, 5.5 minutes here. If we can actually take on certain questions, if you guys have some.
This is Abraham from Siemens. You mentioned about architectural governance.
Yeah.
Do you have any metric or any measurement that you had identified and made it part of your dashboard for the developer? Because you mentioned about dashboard for the developer as well as some aspects of the architectural governance or design governance aspect. Do you have any metric, any way you translated it in the monitoring approach?
So typically, when you actually talk about architecture, so developer, when it comes to dashboards, it's an operational aspect, right? Yeah. You're already into doing something, and something is showing up. When you look at architecture, you need to actually have a reference architecture. Thou shalt build this house this way. Here's your corners. Here's your main wall. Here's how you interact. And then you go drill down to the next level where you actually go look at patterns, design patterns for each of your tech stack, right? And that, by and large, actually, as long as your guidelines are framed up, and you now actually have, and that's a core set of architects, lesser amount of time, based on your technology, you've actually arrived at that particular reference architecture and the next level patterns. It becomes, and then you also provide them with reference implementations. Hey, this is a common way, this is an already implemented code that follows this particular pattern. Go look at it before you deviate or have a reason to deviate. And that catalog is available for developers, and that's something that we actually go request. And there are always use cases that are exceptions, and those will be looked at as a governance board. And we meet once a week to actually as core subset of team. Hopefully that answers that.
Yeah, thank you.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Here.
Sorry. Yep.
Sujata from Altec. I just would like to know, you mentioned some of the statistics where it has really reduced quite a good amount of cost and other stuff. How much you would like to, or you have already passed on the benefit to your customer or end user?
Well, yeah, so these are all realized benefits. I'm not making it up, right? Okay. These are all numbers that are actually coming out of our last year's experience, right? What used to be, if we had done traditional way, the way we were, we'll probably get fired in a fairly quick time, right? These are all realized benefits, but the bug doesn't. There's always things to do better, right? We're challenging ourselves in every possible way, and the creativity and ability to actually go look at things differently and squeeze the last ounce. That's always the culture, right? So, like I said, boss, 2 years back, right? Can you do this and 50% less faster? By the way, there's some more coming at you, right? And how do you handle those situations? And it requires step back, look at all that you do, and where are you actually spending your times, and going after that. And out of the box thinking, and some places we take help where we needed to. And some of the other last summary slide that you see here is sort of futuristic looking, right? We haven't stopped here, and there's always things to do that we can go do that in those ways. Sure.
Any more questions? All right, with that, okay, we have one more question.
This is Vivek from Siemens.
Sorry,
yeah.
Yeah.
My question is that, I see that you have got a lot of benefits implementing DevOps. How does your ROI look like? I mean,
so
what was the investment, that was made, and what is the ROI that you are looking at?
So we being in IT, we're not a revenue generating organization, right? But the return on investment is our productivity in terms of our agility. It's not so much as a factor of just the cost, right? It is our ability to respond to our business needs in a timely manner. You're competing in a world which is actually, if you're not actually, you're probably 2 days late, you're losing out on something that's even bigger than your cost aspects. So we are in an IT application development supporting our businesses, and agility becomes important, super important for us to react to. And that's what the key driver is. Coming to ROIs, yes, you do have definite advantages, right? Look at 17 admins sitting for 4 weeks and doing some stuff versus doing it in 22 hours. Blueprinting, there you go. Go do some better stuff, right? Go take some other challenge, do something else that's better for the organization. Look strategic, right? Now you've taken away that chunk of time to go do other things. There's your ROI, and those are the numbers that some of the cost savings numbers that are coming in. But that's not the only factor. Our primary factor is agile, nimble organization, ability to actually go cater to our business needs in a timely fashion. And that becomes priority, and everything else sort of, yes, cost will come down at some point, but these are our ROIs that are driven out of that. Okay.
All right, with that, it's time to thank our keynote speaker with a big round of applause, and also request Mr. Sivaguru to kindly come on stage.